Tonight, farewell to a president. America salutes Jimmy Carter and his remarkable rise from the farmlands of Georgia to the most powerful office on earth and his lifetime of service to the world.
I'm Mark Strassman. People here in Plains, Georgia are grieving a friend and neighbor, the start of America's final farewell to Jimmy Carter.
Also tonight, winter wallop. The powerful storm moving across the country, threatening millions in 25 states with snow, ice, and brutal cold.
I'm Ian Lee in Kansas City, where they're using this salt on the roads ahead of what's expected to be the worst storm in over 30 years.
New Orleans terror attack. The city and police face the first lawsuit as memorials begin.
I'm Omar Villafranca in New Orleans, where a vigil tonight will honor the victims, and we're learning more about what the suspect said in the months leading up to the attack.
Plus, controversial toll.
I'm Allie Bauman in New York City, where a first-in-the-nation plan to decrease traffic while raising billions for public transit starts Sunday over fierce objections.
Medals of Freedom. 19 recipients honored today in the president's final ceremony. And later, from peanuts to power. CBS's Nicole Killian on the trailblazer from Plains.
People didn't know who he was.
Nobody had any idea. And then some people who say, oh, that guy who farms, or the peanut guy. And then there's this conversation about who he is and what he stands for.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Jerika Duncan.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us this Saturday. The little town of Plains, Georgia, led the nation today as we began 6 days of mourning, honoring, and celebrating Jimmy Carter, the 39th president of the United States. Carter, who died last Sunday at the age of 100, is lying in repose tonight at the Carter Center in Atlanta. The public will be paying respects until Tuesday. A state funeral will be held Thursday in Washington, and then he'll be buried later that day in Plains. Mark Strassman reports on the farewell to Jimmy Carter, an emotional day without a doubt. Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Jerika. Here at the Carter Center, everyday Americans now have the chance to file past Jimmy Carter's casket. This 6-day American farewell began earlier today in Carter's hometown. To the people of Plains, he was Mr. Jimmy, not Mr. President. Jimmy Carter's presidential hearse motored past them this morning, past small-town landmarks, past the familiar faces of friends and neighbors who knew him best, lifelong residents like Josephine Thomas.
He never gave up on being nice to people because he was president of the United States. He was always just so sweet to everyone.
Carter's motorcade then stopped at his boyhood farm, now a National Historical Park. It's where he first learned to grow peanuts. And there, a bell tolled 39 times, saluting America's 39th president. As an only in America story, the one about the president from Plains was a doozy.
Would you place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand and repeat after me?
A one-term commander-in-chief, he rose politically from nowhere in 1976, lost his re-election to Ronald Reagan in 1980, then had a remarkable second act for decades as a globe-trotting humanitarian. Typically with him, his late wife Rosalind. They were married 77 years, a shared lifetime of service.
Every American has a right and a duty to help shape the future course of the United States.
People who knew him best agree. His twin superpowers and guardrails were faith and hope.
And that faith journey is the foundation of his life. And
Jason Carter, his grandson.
He believed and knew that he was going to a better place, and I think that set us at ease.
Jan Williams lives in Plains.
He has touched my life in so many ways.
She's saying goodbye now to a 50-year friendship.
I just want to go and stand by the casket for a few moments and just say out loud, probably, thank you, Mr. Jimmy.
This is the end of an era in Plains. Jimmy Carter was their friend, their neighbor, this small community's identity. And now this national farewell shifts to Atlanta, the first chance for everyday Americans to pay their respects. First stop, Georgia's state capitol building. Governor Brian Kemp greeted the Carter family. A A moment of silence honored his service as the state's governor. Then Marines carried the casket into the Carter Presidential Center, also in Atlanta. He'll lie in repose through Tuesday morning. Chip Carter, one of his 4 children.
He was an amazing man, and he was held up and propped up and soothed by an amazing woman. And the two of them together changed the world.
After Atlanta, America's final salute shifts to Washington, D.C. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, Carter will lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda. On Thursday, a state funeral at the National Cathedral. President Biden will give one of the eulogies. President-elect Trump has said he'll attend.
We've seen that outpouring of support from all over the world and from all over the country. And he believed, I think, in his heart that he had a real personal relationship with the American people.
Jimmy Carter will be buried this Thursday in Plains. Jerika, buried true to who he was and where he came from.
And Mark, as you know, most Americans alive today were born after Jimmy Carter left the White House. So what do you think will likely happen in terms of how people will learn about him this week?
Well, I think one of the takeaways you're going to hear this week, Jerika, is that for Carter, the presidency as a personal achievement came second. It wasn't his career highlight. To him, all those years of doing good works after he left the White House, that's what he was most proud of.
Always about the people. Mark Strassman, we thank you so much for your reporting. Tonight, a massive winter storm is expected to bring heavy snow, ice, and bitter cold to large parts of this country. 50 million people in 25 states are in the storm's path. Today, whiteout conditions slowed traffic up the Cottonwood Canyons near Salt Lake City. And as you can see here, icy conditions made it a treacherous trip for this big rig near Wichita, Kansas. CBS's Ian Lee is in Kansas City, where crews are getting ready. Ian, good evening.
Good evening, Jerika. We got a firsthand look at the preparations for what city officials say will be one of the most significant storms in the history of Kansas City. For city manager Brian Platt, battling the snowstorm starts 48 hours before the first flurry.
That we've been pre-treating our roads for 2 days before the storm means that we really shouldn't get to a moment where the roads are impassable.
His 300 plows will clear roughly 6,400 lane miles, or equivalent to driving between New York and Los Angeles more than twice.
Every single plow has a tablet with a GPS mapping system.
Inside Snow Command, a team monitors their progress.
You can also see who's driving, how fast they're driving, kind of where they are in their route and things of that nature.
While the technology keeps the trucks on track, the star is the salt
this
itself.
Is our secret weapon. This is a product called Ice Bane. It's magnesium chloride.
How does this salt work on the roads?
It actually will bind to the snow particles and melt them. That liquid is then much easier to remove from the street.
He calls it a secret weapon. You sound pretty confident.
We've never been more prepared as a city. We are absolutely ready for this, no matter what's coming.
While officials believe they're ready, Jerika, they need the public's help. The city manager says it's important for folks to stay off the roads during the storm so the plows can clear them quickly and safely.
Ian Lee, you and your team stay safe. Thank you. Let's go right to CBS News meteorologist Andrew Kozak with the very latest on this weather threat. Andrew.
Yeah, Jerika, tonight we are gearing up for a very powerful dynamic winter storm. Let's bring up all the watches and warnings that we have, extending now from the East Coast all the way up through the plains and into the Rockies and the Canadian border. What we're seeing here are millions of people that are not only going to be looking at snow, but ice and even blizzard conditions. It's already starting across areas like Kansas City over toward Wichita, where we now have a blizzard warning in effect there in that yellow-green. Meantime, across 70 and across Route 50 all the way to the East Coast, we have a winter storm warning, winter storm watch for areas like Philadelphia and Baltimore. We're going to see this affect those areas as we head into your Monday. Storm really gearing up. Heavy rain to the south, ice across the Ohio Valley. Meantime, we're going to be looking at that snow starting to fly Sunday night and into Monday for the East Coast I-95. How much will we get when all of this is over with by Monday? In some cases, several inches. In some cases, more than a foot to a foot and a half. Jerika, we're going to be watching this very carefully for your Sunday and into your Monday. If you have to be out, be very careful out there on the roads.
Yeah, a lot of snow. Andrew Kozak, thank you. New Orleans is bustling tonight. The crowds returning to Bourbon Street after this week's truck attack. CBS's Omar Villafranca is in the French Quarter tonight with details on how the 14 victims are being remembered. Omar.
Good evening. Memorials with flowers and crosses like the one behind me on Canal Street are growing as the city is starting their grieving process after this week's deadly terrorist attack. Now, this morning at the City of Love Church, dozens of people gathered to remember the victims and honor those first responders. The mayor and other city leaders thanked police for their work in the aftermath. 13 of the 14 people killed have now been identified, including a new one, 31-year-old Edward Pettifer, who is a British citizen. More than 30 others were injured. Many are still recovering in local hospitals. Now, as the investigation ramps up, CBS News has learned that earlier in 2024, the suspect posted several audio recordings to SoundCloud saying music was, quote, the voice of Satan, and warning it could lead people to forbidden acts like using drugs and alcohol. Now, next week, we're also expecting the first of several victim lawsuits to be filed against the city of New Orleans and the New Orleans Police Department. Lawyers there are saying there was just a lack of basic safety measures. There's also a city council next week that's going to be talking about beefing up security in New Orleans. Jerika?
Omar Villafranca tonight in the French Quarter. Thank you. Well, tomorrow, New York City will implement a first-in-the-nation plan meant to reduce traffic and pay for transit improvement, and it is controversial. CBS's Ali Bauman is in Manhattan tonight tracking all of the twists and turns.
Eureka transit officials say this city's congestion pricing could be a model for others across the country, encouraging more people to use public transportation while lowering commute times and cleaning the air. But critics call it another tax on the middle class. For such a fast-paced city, getting around New York can feel surprisingly slow.
Ambulances can't get to hospitals. Police cars can't get to crimes in progress.
Jana Lieber is chair of the agency which runs New York's subways and soon its congestion pricing. Starting Sunday, most drivers will be charged $9 to enter Manhattan's central business district.
We live here. We shouldn't have to pay extra to like move around.
I mean, I think no one should be driving in Manhattan unless they absolutely have to.
The state aims to raise $15 billion earmarked for mass transit upgrades. And so this money is on top of the money that the MTA gets from tolls and taxes. So how do you guarantee to people that this funding is going to be going towards those projects that people have been waiting years for?
But listen, New Yorkers are recognizing that we are getting a ton of work done. We've opened 2 new train stations just in the last couple of years.
New York's plan is based on London's congestion charge. But 20 years after being implemented there, London ranks as the 3rd most congested city in the world by traffic analysis company INRIX. Lieber maintains the statistic doesn't tell the whole story.
The proof for London is they have a lot less cars coming to the middle of their downtown clogging the streets, but they have more people coming.
And New York's plan has survived several legal challenges, but some opponents are still hoping that President-elect Donald Trump will find a way to kill the toll once he's in office. For now, it's set to begin just after midnight. Jerika?
All right, in a few short hours, Ali Bauman, thank you. Today, President Biden awarded 19 recipients the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor.
Not a bad group, huh?
Honorees included former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, as well as conservationist Jane Goodall, basketball star Magic Johnson, U2 frontman Bono, actors Michael J. Fox, and one of my favorites, Denzel Washington. Straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, a stark warning tonight about the prospect of increased gun violence. We'll tell you where it's coming from and why. With just days remaining in the Biden administration, not all of the president's appointees are departing quietly. The head of the ATF is warning that the new administration has the agency in its sights. Here's Scott McFarland.
After a gun crime unlike any in modern American history, it didn't take long for the feds to identify the shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania in July.
The assassination attempt on President Trump. ATF identified the shooter in that case in under 30 minutes.
Stephen Dettelbach is director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which helped identify the gunman, Thomas Crooks, by tracing the assault rifle Crooks fired. Dettelbach says the ATF is navigating a wave of emerging gun dangers, including ghost guns, one of which was used to kill the CEO of United Healthcare.
They're very pervasive because they appeal to people who can't get guns legally.
And these small parts, some created on 3D printers, which turn traditional guns into automatic weapons. Dettelbach, who expects to leave his post when Donald Trump is inaugurated, warns that this agency is a prime target for major reductions. Trump has blasted Dettelbach by name.
On day one, we will sack the radical gun grabber, Steve Dettelbach.
Dettelbach says the funding cuts are nearly certain, despite new reductions in the crime rate. Congressional Republicans already proposed $188 million in cutbacks to the agency in 2024, alleging the ATF overreaches and places too many restrictions, including on pistol braces.
If ATF were gone, what domino would fall?
And people would be killed.
One major part of ATF's job is helping local officers, including those on the Baltimore police force, track down shooters and solve cases, like a shooting in 2023 at a local university and a recent takedown of violent drug gangs.
So a lot of things that you don't realize that they're involved in with local law enforcement, they play a big part in.
Dettelbach says no matter who's in charge, he hopes the ATF's work remains the focus.
I believe that the mission of this agency, which is fighting violent crime, is wildly nonpartisan and bipartisan.
And just days ago, the ATF agents were among the first on the scene helping track the weapons and explosives used in the New Orleans and Las Vegas attacks. Scott McFarland, CBS News, Washington.
The new 119th Congress has been sworn in, one of the first orders of business confirming President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet nominees. New Senate Majority Leader John Thune tells CBS News that some of Trump's most controversial picks must go through the confirmation process.
We have a 3-vote margin in the Senate, as you point out, but I do think that in most cases, at least, most of our Republican senators are inclined to give the president the people that he wants in these positions.
That full interview can be seen tomorrow on Face the Nation. Still ahead on the CBS Weekend News, LeBron James forces a rewrite of the NBA record book. Stay with us. And a new record for LeBron James. He now has the most 30-point games in NBA history. James broke Michael Jordan's record of 562 30-point games last night. The Lakers beat the Hawks 119-102. Well, the owners of the house made famous by the TV series Breaking Bad are hoping to cash in. The 4-bedroom, 1-bath property in Albuquerque, New Mexico is for sale. The homeowners say fans just keep showing up day and night, even though the series ended in 2013. The asking price for the home, $4 million. Next on the CBS Weekend News, how a 4-year-old who wrote to Jimmy Carter is now among the keepers of his legacy. Another view outside the Carter Center in Atlanta there, where a memorial of flowers is growing as a former president lies in repose tonight. Just steps away is the Carter Presidential Library and Museum, filled with stories about the 39th president, including a very personal one told to our Nicole Killian.
Dear Jimmy Carter.
Meredith Evans was just 4 years old when she wrote this letter to President Jimmy Carter.
Here is some money to help you be president.
Now she serves as director of the Carter Presidential Library and Museum.
When I met President Carter for the first time and I told him about the letter, we both laughed about it.
Evans says Carter's compassion and authenticity are woven throughout the museum, starting with his childhood in the rural farm town of Plains and nearby Archery.
It was an African-American community. I don't think it was until Plains that he realized how difficult segregation was for people of color.
And it was the people of Plains who helped catapult the small-town peanut farmer to the governorship and ultimately the White House.
People didn't know who he was.
Nobody had any idea. And some of the campaign videos talk about Carter, who's that? And then there's this conversation about who he is and what he stands for.
Carter won resoundingly over President Gerald Ford in 1976, putting his own stamp on the inauguration.
He was the first to get out of the car.
From this replica of the Oval Office to Camp David, where President Carter negotiated a peace agreement between the leaders of Israel and Egypt.
He brought two arch enemies together and had a treaty signed. Not many presidents can say they did that.
But Carter's presidency was mired with controversies, from record inflation to the Iranian hostage crisis, ultimately sealing his defeat against Ronald Reagan. The 39th president went on to establish the Carter Center, focusing on humanitarian work, which earned him the Nobel Peace Prize.
How did he view receiving the Peace Prize?
With joy and humility. He doesn't see himself better than anyone.
Nicole Killian, CBS News, Atlanta.
Well, that is the CBS Weekend News for this Saturday. We thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jerika Duncan in New York. Have a great night.